That's my biggest accomplishment since COVID started.
Hey guys, we've got a couple stories today, one on civil rights groups demanding federal legalization and one on the updates of what's happening in Oregon with their psychedelics law. Okay, so first, in some news that just came out actually about an hour ago as I'm filming this, two civil rights groups, the ACLU and NAACP, put out a statement demanding legalization at a federal level, or demanding basically that the MORE Act be passed through the House and into the Senate. The MORE Act is the Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement Act that Gerald Nadler had put up in 2019, now has reintroduced back into the House, will probably be passed. There is this kind of weird thing happening with the Senate also crafting their own bill. Chuck Schumer himself is crafting a bill that would legalize marijuana that he continually says will be introduced soon, but has not been. So it's this kind of weird thing. I'm unsure if they can be kind of merged into one or not. That's worth asking and figuring out, actually. Anyway, so there was some strong language from these two groups that were saying that this basically is an extremely important bill that needs to be passed as soon as possible. And here's a little quote from what they said. In the face of a growing national dialogue on discriminatory law enforcement practices, including the disproportionate policing of drug use in communities of color, transforming our criminal legal system and redressing its harms is more relevant and more pressing than ever before. Marijuana reform represents a modest but necessary first step towards that transformation and toward repairing the harm wrought by the war on drugs. The MORE Act remains the most effective and equitable way forward. So that's just part of one big letter that they just sent to the House that surely will make some waves and will put more pressure on this bill actually getting passed soon. And if not that, will also put pressure on Chuck Schumer to introduce his bill that he's been teasing for months now. We'll probably see that bill in the coming weeks, if not next week.
Who hasn't had their D today? You need to take the D. You're looking kind of pale. You're looking kind of moody. You need to take your D. You need it now. Take the D.
Okay, second story is we had that big splash happen in 2020 in November when Oregon became the first state to decriminalize all drugs and to create a program that would be therapy or psychedelic assisted therapy in the state, mainly mushrooms. And since then, we haven't really heard much, or there hasn't been a whole lot of waves. And so I kind of looked into it and just to see where things are. And so on the one side, the therapy side, it is going through the process, but the process itself is kind of a longer story. So there has been a board created, appointed 17 members that have, psychologists, mental health experts, these kinds of people that are part of the board who are working on the kind of rules of what this new therapy program would look like. And they have until basically June of next year to create the rules for this. That then gets pushed to the Oregon Health Authority, and they can implement these rules slowly. And the timeline, here's the timeline, I'm going to put it up on the screen. Basically, they have until January of 2023 to start to get everything in line, and then they start accepting applications for people who want to create this therapy business around psychedelics or around psilocybin specifically. Yeah, it's happening, but it's a very slow process, and that's kind of the thing that we forget. We're kind of used to marijuana being on a ballot and we legalize, and then all of a sudden things change within months. But when it comes to creating an entirely new industry from the ground up, it will take years. And so this is a longer process. On the other hand, there were two bills that were passed in November. One was specifically about the therapy, and one was specifically about decriminalization. And the decriminalization bill has been allocating funds, so $20 million, and they've been kind of putting that in different places. They have put it towards rehabilitation. They have put it towards tribal groups and people who have been affected by the war on drugs in the past. So on that side, it's not as splashy, it's not as exciting looking, but it is making a difference slowly, and a lot more money has been put into places that have been suffering for so long because of the war on drugs. In the long term, it seems like we won't really fully see what Oregon's decriminalized culture will look like until 10 years from now, when things have finally settled and we've created an industry around it. And that's kind of a sign for what California is. California's doing the same thing with psychedelics. They're about to pass legal psychedelics, and it will be a very long time. And they're saying probably around 2024 for any kind of therapy-assisted thing to show up. So we are planting the seeds that will eventually grow somewhere in the mid-decade. So we have a while. Cool. And that is kind of what's happening. We will be back on Friday. It is Friday. We'll be back on Monday with more stuff. See you then.
IGF reacts to my new song.